Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor in his son's room in front of the amazing Hail to the Thief collection he's got growing. As you can tell from my rather intentionally clickbaity title, Does Ed O'Brien Have Any Talent? We're going to be reviewing the album by Ed O'Brien, stylized as EoB, called Earth. Now, I intentionally gave it that title, and if you know my channel, you know that I don't give bad reviews. I don't think it's worth my time to review things that are garbage or bad. I'm never going to be like, not good, 0 out of 10. That's not my style. I always find something interesting to say. That said, I can be critical at times, especially of things that I already know and I already love. So that's my little caveat. And I am going to be quite critical of this album while also highlighting what makes it so good. The main reason that I wanted to record it, I think, should be fairly clear by the fact that I'm in a Radiohead museum of my son. The fact that I love Radiohead and I think they are one of the greatest bands in rock history, if not potentially even the greatest rock band in history, eventually. And I'm fascinated by the fact that Ed O'Brien released a solo album. You see, for Radiohead fans, Ed O'Brien is the other guy. Okay, I'm not going to speak for all Radiohead fans, okay? Radiohead fans are like super excited and toxic, and I'm going to get like 50,000 messages in here about how wrong I am and pretty funny for a Radiohead fan to not know. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. My ignorance is profound. Please correct me. Don't be upset. Don't think I don't want to be corrected. Everything I say that's wrong, please tell me that it's wrong. But for me, as a Radiohead fan, whose first concert was the Paradise Lounge in 1995, for me, Ed O'Brien is the ultimate other guy. The ultimate other guy in rock and roll. You know, you've got the leader, Tom York, who writes most of the songs, the big genius. Then you have a sort of counterpoint with Johnny Greenwood, who's like got his own kind of genius in his musicality, and they sort of like work together. And then you have his brother playing bass, Colin, and he's sort of like the rock, and along with him is the other part of the rhythm section, Phil Selway, who's like just the awesome drummer, kind of goofy dude. And now there's that other guy. Oh, who is that other guy? He's not one of the brothers. He's not the lead guy. You always forget his name. But his role in the band is always quite important because he's sort of the guy who's too handsome and too cool to be in Radiohead, right? I mean, he was often like the spokesman, like the PR rep for a pharmaceutical company, you know? Like they'd ask Tom York some question and he'd just be like, Ed? Because Ed was always there, and he just looked too handsome, and he seemed too put together, and he seemed almost too normal to be a member of Radiohead. But that being said, he's not just another guy. We'll get to that in a second. But that made me think, like, who are the other great other guys in rock history? Please put in comments if you can think of others. I think often the other guy is a rhythm guitarist. I mean, like Ed O'Brien, who's a rhythm guitarist, who's not even the only rhythm guitarist, because sometimes Tom York plays rhythm guitar. Think of like Bradley Whitford in Aerosmith, you know, like, oh yeah. Or James Iha in Smashing Pumpkins, Robbie Krieger in The Doors, Sterling Morrison in the Velvet Underground. You're like, oh, wait, did he play bass? Or did he play, oh no, actually he played bass. You can usually tell the other guy by the fact that you wait a second to figure out if we're talking about a bass player or a rhythm guitarist. Often the other guy, though, is a bass player, like Bill Wyman in the Rolling Stones, or even Chris Novoselic in Nirvana. Even though there's just 3 of them, he's very much the other guy. He's the guy who didn't go on to found the Foo Fighters, and he isn't the lead singer guy. Noel Redding is a perfect example of the other guy, and a guy who I think gets underrated. You know, I actually bought Noel Redding's solo album by Fat Mattress on vinyl a long time ago. And this album, EoB, has kind of a Fat Mattress vibe to it, you know? Like this explosion of creativity that comes from a stifled voice. You know, sometimes Noel Redding, I think he got 1 song per every Jimi Hendrix CD after the first one, and you could tell he had so much more that he wanted to do. But Jimmy would just be like, you know, I'm Jimi Hendrix, right? And you're Noel Redding, right? So you're not going to be playing guitar on here. And I think to a certain extent that has to be what's going on here with Ed O'Brien. I mean, if you have Tom York writing songs for you, and you have the rest of Radiohead playing them for you, Ed O'Brien would have to be so good, so unbelievably good, to edge out a song, even 1 song on a Radiohead album. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like George Harrison too, who was the other guy until they let him sort of make more songs on his own and put them on the album, 2 per album. But even then, when he went solo, you know, he released a double album in like 2 weeks, right? Because he had just this explosion of passion and energy. The one thing I would say as to why we shouldn't think of this simply as an other guy album is that with Radiohead, there is truly no other guy. That doesn't actually exist in the band. They are one of these bands, and I think that rock and roll fans underestimate. If there's a band in which no member can be replaced, then you have an excellent band. When you see Radiohead in concert, Ed O'Brien is as important as Tom York. I'm just going to say it. I saw Atoms for Peace. It was garbage. I mean, it's Flea. No. It's not good. It's not Radiohead. It's good. It's not Radiohead. Ed O'Brien is a multi-instrumentalist. He's sort of the calm, stable one. It's important to have somebody who can just be handsome and answer questions. He is very much the glue that keeps the band together, I believe. And when you see them in concert and you see him running around playing keyboard and playing guitar and doing backup vocals, he is 100% necessary. If Radiohead lost Ed O'Brien, they would not be half the band that they are now. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Even though I titled this whole thing, Does He Have Any Talent? Of course he does. But we just have to figure it out. And on this solo album, we're going to get to see what would happen in a world. I never want to find out what happens to Radiohead without Ed O'Brien. But we will find out what happens to Ed O'Brien without Radiohead. Interestingly, this album is produced by Flood. I used to think it was The Flood. It's just Flood. I mean, talk about a producer. He produced the best Nick Cave album, Boatman's Call, the best U2 album, Zooropa. I love that album. And also Joshua Tree, I guess. The best PJ Harvey album, To Bring You My Love. I mean, he's an amazing producer, capable of getting a lot out of his musicians and a lot out of his creators. So this is a fascinating thing. Just on this principle alone, a member of Radiohead is making an album produced by Flood. Already, Radiohead and U2 have some uncomfortable overlapping at times. I like U2, but I don't love U2. You know, sometimes when Tom York is doing this whoo at the end, you're like, where did you get that from? Okay? And this is the most clear, unless they did some. It's pretty amazing that someone who says he's a Radiohead fan doesn't know that Bono and Tom York released a single for Tibet in 1999. I don't know. Maybe they did a song together. As far as I know, they've never directly collaborated. And in this song, it's as close as we're going to get. So let's get to this album. Let's get to this album, Earth, by Ed O'Brien, stylized as EoB. I'm going to start off with doing something I like to do. I'm going to give you the Earth equation. This is the basic equation that most of the songs follow. There are outliers, but here it is. First of all, guitar-driven. That's why I'm in front of this Hail to the Thief wall over here, because, let's face it, Radiohead has a very ambiguous relationship to guitar. That's fine for Johnny Greenwood, right? I mean, he's all orchestrating and writing for Paul Thomas Anderson, but what's poor Ed O'Brien going to do? He's a guitar player. So every single song on this album is like guitar up front, guitar based, okay? And let's admit it, Radiohead is probably best when they have guitar but they are ambiguous about it. This is not ambiguous. It's just guitar up front everywhere. Very well layered instrumentation, especially almost every song ends with some kind of extended jam session in which there's an interesting interplay and weaving of different layers. It's really worth listening to, especially the first track, Shangri-La. Listen to that to get a sense of whether or not you're going to like this album, because that's very much the nature of this album, is that opening track, which I'll get to more in a second. The lyrics are generic, often. Okay, I would say if you're being unkind, you would call them generic. I don't want to be fully unkind because I sincerely really like Ed O'Brien. I would say maybe they are at times embarrassingly sincere. He's not like, Tom York, and I've raised the question before, is Tom York a good lyricist? I think you could make the argument that he's not, that he just sings cliches, but sings them ironically, right? He is a great lyricist, but it's a debate that you can have, right? But with this album, like at times you just hear him singing and you're like, oh, yikes. His vocals are interesting, and I think this is part of the fact that he's a backup vocalist in Radiohead, and he has to do a lot of different things with his singing. He has a lot of character on this album, but there's no consistent character at all. As I go through track by track, you'll hear the way that I'm like sort of bouncing off different singers who he reminds me of. So he has character, but not consistent character. So let's get to the first track, Shangri-La. Very promising. Probably my second favorite, if not my favorite track on the album. It kind of begins with Thom Yorke style vocals, kind of a falsetto, and then there's like a Radiohead guitar tone, and then I found myself thinking, oh my god, this sounds like Radiohead. But like, of course it does. Like, what kind of anti-rhythm guitarist perspective do I have to assume that Ed O'Brien has no influence over the sound? That's like saying that All Things Must Pass sounds like a Beatles album. Of course it does. It's one of the creators. So at times, this album sounds very much like a Radiohead album. And particularly on this track where you have guitars and some electronic boops in the background. Lots of space to breathe. At the end, it's excellent. I just love the end bit. I'm going to play you right now 14 seconds of the end bit so you can hear the kind of jams that he's able to create, that Flood's able to produce. Listen to the different layers of sound and the different like bloops and guitar. And the 14 seconds starts right now. Okay, I hope you heard what I heard there. By the way, I do 14 seconds because I think 15 seconds is the copyright claim. And it's not that I don't want musicians to get money, it's that I don't want ads on my video, like any ads. Like, not for me, not for them, not for anybody. Radiohead would appreciate that. Okay, so that's a really great song. It's a very promising beginning. It follows up with Brazil, with very kind of wussy guitar and vocals. This is where some of that over-earnestness comes in. But again, there's an interesting thing where he takes the guitar and he loops it. It's a very kind of Radiohead trick. Like, what's that song, Don't Leave Me, off of King of Limbs? You know, like where he sort of takes something and turns a guitar line into a repeated sample to create a new rhythm. And then he starts singing, and his singing here doesn't sound like Thom Yorke. It sounds like Depeche Mode. Ooh. I have kind of a complicated relationship with Depeche Mode. I used to say, I know enough girls that I never need to buy a Depeche Mode album, which looking at it now is a weirdly gendered sexist thing for me to have said. Bad former Skye. The point was this: I often associated Depeche Mode with girls that I liked, and that I had to sort of pretend to like them in order to not seem like a jerk who just looked down on those girls' taste in music. Now that I'm an adult, I don't hang around with girls, I talk to women, and now that I am an adult and a man and I can listen to Depeche Mode's albums, they're actually pretty good. Depeche Mode is not a bad band. I dismissed them probably because I was dealing with some toxic masculinity and I couldn't handle how sexy that man is when he sings. And I couldn't handle how good the music was. It's interesting that Flood produced Depeche Mode because here it feels as though, and at times, Flood is taking Ed O'Brien and moving him through the Flood catalog. I mean, he never gets into Nick Cave or PJ Harvey or Killers, but still, it's interesting in that way. We get to the track Deep Days, which features Colin Greenwood on bass. I believe that's the one, which is cool. Nice to see a member of Radiohead in there. Kind of cool, like, punchy groove. Like, it actually has a groove to it. Nice guitar notes that are very, like accentuating, like they're used rhythmically at the beginning and the end of phrases. Again, some more small bloops. A nice drum outro, and it really emphasizes the groove. The lyrics here, he starts to get a little bit Bono bland. You know how Bono like often just writes lyrics and it feels like he writes half the lyrics and then he's like, oh, I have to write the rest of them, and so he just says the opposite. Like, I'm hungry, but I'm full. I'm thirsty, but I'm not. So this is, you know, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. When you rise, I will rise. A little bit lazy. Like filler lyrics that you then just, we'll just keep them. No one will notice. Long Time Coming is the worst track on the album by far, to the point where it sounds like a parody. Like, it sounds like a song that would be in Spinal Tap, like before they became Spinal Tap, like when they were like listening to the Flower People or something. Like this sounds like a Fat Mattress song, just like what makes it so bad, and this is lyrically, is that it's a song in the third person with no insight. So if you sing about somebody in the third person, there's a lot of opportunity to get inside their head and travel around and figure out what it is. This is just like, I saw some girl looking out the window. She was sad. It's just terrible. Do Ed O'Brien a service and never listen to track 3 on this album. Like seriously, it brings the entire album down at least one step. The next track is great. Mass, kind of droney, another guitar-led, lots of kind of Radiohead ooze in the back, some sounds that sound like Starship Enterprise. And then we get to Banksters. And this is interesting because here I'm like, is he trying to do like a Tom York thing? Like complaining about bankers and complaining about money? Or is he complaining about his money because it's hard to keep money when you're a rock star? I think it's a more general thing. I don't know. Political commentary by millionaire rock stars about class inequality is always a little bit tough, but still, it's not bad. But the lyrics, again, kind of Bono bland. It feels like heaven, it feels like hell. It's red, but it's blue. It's a cat, but it's a dog. The track Sail On, I listened to this album 3 times so far, and the first time I listened to Sail On, I didn't even note it. And then the last time, it's my favorite track on the album. It's beautiful. And I think maybe because Flood has his hands the least on this. It's not that I don't like what Flood does, but this, I think, is just the purest example of what Ed O'Brien can do. It's a simple song, it's guitar, his voice is strong, it's not too affected, the lyrics are simple, sail on like a summer breeze, but they're not cringy. If you were trying to get into this album and give Ed O'Brien a shot, and I truly believe that if you are a Radiohead fan, it is your job, it is your obligation to give this music a listen. We need to support this band and everything every single person does, because the more we do, the happier they are, the more likely they are to come out with another LP. We have to support them and keep them happy. Individual, collective. We have to keep Radiohead alive, okay? Radiohead's like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of rock bands. Like if they fall apart, we are going to lose something so, so special. So Sail On, just listen to Sail On and Shangri-La, and you'll get a sense of the great parts of this album. The next track, Olympic, spelled with a K, is like this. You get the sense like he just grew up in the 80s and 90s and listened to some house music and sort of had kind of weird house sounds on there. And then it's the most Bono. This feels like it could be like a parody of Zooropa era U2. Has kind of like a Bono mumble from Lemon. Very Bono-esque lyrics, Bono bland. Some do, some don't. It's big, it's small. But the end is excellent. Another great outro. Omar Hakim is playing drums. And he's a great studio drummer. One of the great studio drummers, if not the greatest studio drummer, at least in the modern age. It's great hearing him play. I was listening to this in the car at some point, and my wife said, I think I like this music, but there's something really obnoxious about it. I don't have the answer. I couldn't answer her why. Even though it's my part-time hobby to discuss music, I didn't have the answer. Do you agree with that? Is there something obnoxious? What is it? I think it might be the vocals and the fact that there isn't any consistent vocal delivery style. But I don't know. Then it ends with Cloak of the Night by Laura Marling, duet. I almost reviewed her album last week. I decided not to. I think Fantano did, so that was a good review. You should always watch him. He's an expert on giving reviews. I'm some dude in this kid's bedroom. That's actually a very nice song. Lyrics, again, are a little bit cringy. Doesn't matter. Okay, so there we go. EoB. Does Ed O'Brien have any talent? Of course he does. He has amazing talent in Radiohead, and as a solo artist, he released an album that is at times great, at times terrible, but for the most part, pretty good. That's what I would say. Okay, but please support it. We need Radiohead alive. Alright, until next time, I'm probably going to review a rap album next. I haven't reviewed any rap in a while, even though less people watch those videos. For my son, for this dehumidifier, which I really should have moved. Because look at that, I mean, that's a lot nicer having that in the back. I mean, a humidifier. Oh, that would have been slick. If I had that going the whole time, Look like I'm in the middle of like a smoke show, like a fog show at a concert? Okay. Until next time, there's the camera.